In the Jewish tradition, there are two kinds of arguments. Arguments not for the sake of heaven, pointless quibbling to prove that you're correct or smarter than the other person. But then there are arguments for the sake of heaven, which is a covenant between two people who genuinely, humbly, and honestly approach a dispute with a desire for truth and an upfront commitment to be in good faith, meaning that one would, in principle, change their position if it were well argued. For example, two people could debate the merits and drawbacks of nuclear power and have a genuine dialogue about their respective positions. If the argument goes well, both people should agree at the end. In arguments for the sake of heaven, losing is a good thing because it means you believed something false before and now you might believe something true. So it's quite a blessing because so logic is all about those truth moments, those moments where you realize the truth, where you put your ego aside and decide that you will approach the facts, you'll approach an argument for the sake of heaven with a genuine desire to know the good and the truth. So the dialectic is, again, it's all about having arguments for heaven's sake. The dialectic consists of three stages: a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis. So to return to our nuclear power example, the thesis might be we should expand nuclear power because it is a clean, efficient energy source and the most viable alternative to replacing fossil fuels. The antithesis might be, yes, but nuclear powers generate deadly nuclear waste. Nuclear waste degrades, but many isotopes don't degrade fast enough to save their victims. Radioisotopes are gifts that keep on giving, sometimes for thousands of years. The synthesis of these two perspectives might be, we should exercise caution when expanding nuclear power and research its benefits and drawbacks in good faith before deciding whether to expand or scale back its use. So we've taken these two contrary positions and we've reached a middle ground. We've reached some sort of synthesis between these two positions. The antithesis then is really a co-thesis. All that the opponent did in this debate was get the proponent to refine their position based on new premises, giving both parties a more nuanced position that they should in principle agree on, the synthesis. And the beauty of the synthesis is that the synthesizing can go on forever. The synthesis can become the new thesis, and both parties can now try to poke holes in the logic of the argument until they reach a conclusion that is almost perfectly true. So you keep going through this dialectic until you arrive at an ultimate synthesis that encompasses this broad range of perspectives and truthfully and logically reflects something about reality. So this is the essence of logic, refining one's position until it aligns with the truth. As we said in the previous module, two things are necessary to reach a sound conclusion. One, the premises must be true, and two, the reasoning must be valid. An argument can be valid without being true. It all depends on the premises. For example, if I have the argument, if I drink coffee, it will rain all day, that premise itself is false. And I drank coffee this morning, which is true. Therefore, it is raining. That is false. It's not raining, but it's valid. It follows the logic of the argument. So there's a difference between truth and validity. It is raining is untrue. It's false because it's not actually happening. It's not raining right now. But because within the logic of the argument, if I drink coffee, it rains all day, then it is actually raining. That's not true, but it is valid. And the reason why it's not true is because one of our assumptions is untrue. And that makes the conclusion untrue. The reason the argument is false is not because the reasoning is false, but because the premise, if I drink coffee, it will rain all day, was false. My coffee consumption has no effect on the weather as far as I'm aware. So thus, this logical argument gives me no relevant information about the weather at the time of writing. I don't even know. So suppose in an alternate universe that whenever I drink coffee, it does rain all day, then this argument would actually be true. It would be a logical conclusion, even if I couldn't see outside. So if an argument is valid and its premises are true, then the argument is true. But if they're not, then it's not guaranteed. An argument can also be invalid but true. So it could just be a conclusion that you reach that is basically on the basis of nothing. It's like getting a shot in the dark. So like the premise all flowers are plants is true. The premise roses are plants is also true. Therefore, roses are flowers. That's true, but invalid. The conclusion roses are flowers is true, but I didn't prove it based on my premises. So the argument is invalid because roses could fall into a category of plant that aren't flowers, such as shrubs, trees, or ferns. So this logical argument doesn't prove that roses are flowers. This argument proves that roses could be flowers, but there's nothing that tells me that they are for sure. So if we switch the first premises to say that all plants are flowers, then the argument would be valid and true, but based on wrong assumptions. Also, all plants aren't flowers. So so you're switching that. You need to switch the definitions in order for this to reach this conclusion from these two premises. So this argument just happens to be true, but it was playing a risky game by introducing a false premise like all plants are flowers into an otherwise true argument. But as they say, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So you can technically have a argument that is invalid but true. Truth contains all and only that which is true. So therefore, truth must exclude everything which is false as being incompatible with its logical structure. So there are two kinds of reasoning. Deductive reasoning begins from the general and works towards the particular, reaching a necessary conclusion from general facts. If I take the premises that no mythical animals really exist and werewolves are mythical animals, I can correctly conclude that werewolves do not really exist. We usually think of this when we think of logic, deducing a necessary fact from a set of premises. That is the most basic conception of logic. But inductive reasoning does the opposite. It begins with the particular and proceeds to the general. For example, I cannot prove technically whether or not the sun rises every morning in the east because this morning, I could be proven wrong. I don't have enough premises to make that claim deductively. What inductive reasoning does is flip the deductive process. Since the sun has risen in the east every morning of my life, I can induce the explanation that this is a regular fact of nature rather than an astonishingly unlikely run of chance. Thus, on the basis of my observation, I have induced a general rule or cause that accounts for it. So I've induced a law that accounts for my observation. So inductive reasoning is surprisingly powerful. All scientific laws were formulated inductively. Scientists created theories that best fit the data that they found in experiments. Based on their observations, they then induced laws like an object will not change its motion unless a force acts upon it. And these actually turn out to truthfully describe reality, even if they can't be proved deductively. They're astonishingly powerful, more so than pure logical truth, because they actually have reference to the real world. The downside is that deductive truths are true by virtue of their very form and cannot be disproven, therefore, whereas inductive proof can be disproven by one example to the contrary. If I saw an object spontaneously change direction or velocity without the action of an outside force, I would need a new set of laws to explain that observation. So, I believe that inductive reasoning is more powerful than deductive reasoning because when you disprove a truth arrived at inductively, you get a more general theory. You don't disprove what you're saying. You're disproving your theory, but you're getting to something more powerful. So it's anti-fragile. Once you break it, it gets stronger. So more often than not, scientific process comes from getting a better inductive reason for a set of facts. Scientific progress comes not from discarding previous theories, but from extending them to accommodate new findings. Thus, when an inductive truth is disproven and then reproven, it becomes stronger and more powerful, like when you work out your muscles at the gym. First, the muscles are actually tearing, they're breaking, but then they heal and grow back stronger. So logic is a little bit like this. This is the meaning of a classical education. The purpose of studying music isn't to know music, it's to become musical, if that makes sense. The purpose of studying the Bible is to become biblical. The purpose of studying mathematics is to become mathematical. Similarly, when you study logic, you become logical. You are a man of the truth as long as you use logic not to deceive, but to enlighten. So this is why the trivium is usually supplemented with ethical education. Logic, grammar, and rhetoric are all morally neutral arts. They can be used for good or for evil. For instance, politicians make regular use of all three. The most important people, whether you like them or not, are all masters in all three arts. The people who really make a difference in the world, no logic, no grammar, and no rhetoric. It's not about being good, yet it's about being effective. And the liberal arts, logic, grammar, rhetoric, can help you become an effective debater and root out false beliefs within yourselves as well as disprove the wrong ideas of others. So logic is absolutely sine qua non to just any understanding of truth and reality. Logic is really, really important. So thank you. God bless. Take care.